Will Sanders was my first principal, and he believed that you shouldn't have any more than 1-page lesson plan. He said that anything more than that is a waste. Nobody's going to use more pages than that. So my entire career, I was a high school principal for 16 years, we tried to move towards 1-page lesson plan. So that's the process I learned real early in my career, and I tried to stick to. So here's the plan for today. I can identify the 5 elements to distinguish working together versus collaborative cooperative learning. Identify the effect of working together versus collaborative learning. Identify recommended number of students that work together in a group. So the whole idea of collaborative learning is people working together. Identify the 3 elements of the comprehensive assessment process. That's a review of the work we did in day 2. I didn't assess it that day. And then the majority of our time will be identifying clear learning targets. Clear learning targets when the students don't know at the beginning of a period, but they will know by the end of the period as a result of your learning design. So that's what a learning target is, and we'll look at that in a little bit. So then move towards the second piece of paper. So the second piece of paper has the 5 elements that distinguish working together from cooperative collaborative instruction. So talk to me about the first element. Tell me, what's the first element? Yeah, positive interdependence. And it says swim and sink together, or sink and swim together. What does that mean to you? Yeah, so if you have 4 people in a group, all 4 people have to have a role in that group. And if one of the people doesn't work, it's not going to be successful. The best student just does it all, and the other people just get the grade. And you have to break down that structure.
Let me ask you this. We do it in our class as well, but when we do collaborative group work, everyone has to actually get in front of class to present their part of the class.
Right, and that's part of individual accountability. That's number 3. But in terms of giving them roles, let's see if I have a copy. I have one with me. You can find tons of these on the internet. You can make, I put it on cardstock, and it turns into a little tent. And you give them a role, like someone's a presenter, someone's a summarizer, someone's a facilitator, someone's a recorder. And then I've seen some that are scouts, like someone that can go around and steal ideas from the other group. But there's all kinds of different roles, and you can find tons of these on the internet. But you have to, when you're starting with group work, you have to define the roles, and then you have to make sure the students understand the role, and then you're constantly having to go through and make sure that they do what they're expected to do. So that's that whole part of interdependence. Any questions on interdependence? Okay, what's the second element? With this Omicron, can we do face-to-face without being actually physically together? How can we do face-to-face if you and I aren't in the same room? Break rooms in Zoom. Sure. I've been doing a whole bunch of team meetings lately in Google, Classroom Meet, all those types of things. So you don't actually have to be in the same room. I've been doing FaceTime with people in China lately and people in India. So you don't actually have to be in the room, and you can still have face-to-face interaction today, right? With all this electronic stuff. But in addition, it's extremely important to hold each student accountable for the work. Because you don't want one student doing the work, handing it in for everybody else. And that was something that was added late, because at first it was just group accountability. You hand in a group project and everyone gets that group grade. But they found out later that it's extremely important that you hold each student accountable for completing the work. They get support from everybody, but everybody's got to complete the work. Okay, any questions on that?
Do you find it more effective to, with the individual accountability, a lot of times students know what their own strengths are. Do you pinpoint, say, okay, it's what I want you to do, or do you allow them to pick their own?
And that's a good question, and it depends on what you're trying to do. But I think you need to do both things, because you want to take them out of their comfort zone sometimes. Sometimes you need a wide receiver, and a person thinks, no, that's not for me, but you still need one, so you have to develop them into a wide receiver, right? So you need to, if you can, you need to grow everyone to be as much of a leader as you possibly can, taking them out of comfort zone, but at times you want them to be in their comfort zone too, because you want them to shine, right? So again, I think it's both ways, is the answer to that question. Okay, give me another element.
Leadership. We're talking about interpersonal and small group skills.
Right, so when people are, you're trying to teach them how to work together, right? So for interpersonal small group skills, you're trying to teach students how to work together. My son is the producer of Fortnite with Epic Games. He has a 300-member team that works on that game. And they're located all over the world. He has to teach that team how to work together. So things like getting along, all those different skills that needs to be part of that whole discussion when you start with group work and every time you do it. So they get together and they talk about how they develop those skills. Okay? Any questions on developing interpersonal or small group skills? All right, and the last thing is group processing. Just like you as teachers need time to reflect at the end of the day, it's important for any time you're doing small group work to give the students an opportunity to talk about not only how they interacted together in getting the project done, but also the quality of their work. So that's that whole reflective time at the end, so they can talk about what's going on. What distinguishes between cooperative learning structures and working together? And the answer to that is these 5 elements. So if all 5 of these elements are in place, it's cooperative learning structure. If any one of these elements is missing, it's purely working together. So all 5 elements have to be in place, or the students are simply working together. Any questions on that question on your tip? No. All 5 of these elements. If all 5 of these elements are not in place, then the students are simply working together. So if all 5 elements are in place, then it's cooperative learning. Okay, so here's the importance of the 5 elements. If students are working together, it has a negative effect on student learning. If students are simply working together, you say, okay, get together with your friends, whoever you want to get together with, and finish your homework. It has a negative effect on student learning. Why do you think that's true? Exactly. They're talking about setting up dates for the weekend. They're talking about something other than what you want to. They're certainly not going to keep on pace. You're wasting time without question. So, working together has a negative effect on student learning. If all 5 elements are in place, it has an extreme positive effect on student learning. It's one of the highest effect sizes of anything we can do as teachers. So allowing students to work together with these 5 elements in place has an extreme positive effect on student learning. If you do research, there has something called effect size. It has a very high effect size on student learning if you have these 5 elements in place. So that's the importance of these 5 elements. I think I answered that question on the 2000 door. Let me actually go to the 2000 door and read it. So the first question is just writing the 5 elements, right? I'll give you a copy at the end. So the first is just writing the 5 elements on the first question. And then the second question says, if any one of the 5 elements is missing, the students are working together and not engaged in collaborative learning. Working together has a blank effect, negative effect on student learning, while cooperative learning structures have a high positive effect on student learning. Okay, what did you say? What's that? Yeah, all those words are there. So it's just filled with blank. If any one of the 5 elements is missing, the students are working together and not engaged in collaborative learning. Working together has a positive, working together is negative effect on student learning. And this is positive. Okay? Any questions on that? You have the papers? You don't get the one yet. That's the ticket out the door. That's the ticket out the door. But I sent it to you guys. So I send everything to you. The ticket out the door too. I send everything to you. All right, so let's see. Okay, any questions on cooperative learning? I'm ready to move on to the next thing. All right. You have any questions on that one? Okay, the next thing is, in order to maximize the effective use of available instruction time, how many students should work together in small groups? What's the magic number for people to work together? Did I give you the papers? I did. I thought I lost my mind there for a second. Got it. Perfect. 2 to 4. Pairs is a great thing to start. So usually I did pairs, and then when I walked around, if I saw 2 pairs had something different or something cool that they could talk about, I put 2 pairs together to make a quad, and then I pull them back up into pairs again. Because if you keep them in quads too long, they seem to get off task for me. So I usually use pairs in my normal structure, like a think, pair, share, or turn and talk. And then every once in a while I put 2 pairs together to make a quad. But if you're right, 2, 3, or 4 works real well. The research shows that if you get more than 4 people in a group, someone gets left out. Someone's left out of the conversation. So it's 2, 3, or 4 is the perfect number in a small group. Any questions? That's number 2 on your ticket out the door. Questions on that one? Okay, number 3 is a review, way back from day 2. According to both Long and Marzano, how many rules should a teacher have posted at the beginning of the school year? 2 is a good number. 2 to 5. They say 3 to 5. But remember, you start the year with 3 to 5, and then you're trying to change rules to procedures and procedures to routine. This is just asking for the number. Anything smaller than 5 I'm going to accept, but they say 3 to 5. So 3 to 5 rules, but you're trying to change rules to procedures to routine. And number 4 is also a review from last week. Remember the triangle? They talked about our assessment system in North Carolina. What are the 3 elements of that assessment system? Give me one. 3 elements of our assessment system. One of them starts with F. What's that? Formative. Formative is the base, remember. And formative assessment takes place every minute of every day. Actually, it's every moment of every day in every classroom in North Carolina. So formative is the base of our assessment system. It's a function of teachers working with students. District offices are not involved with formative assessment. It's an interaction of teachers working with students. Formative assessment. It's the biggest thing we do. Okay, another one starts with a B. Benchmarks and diagnostics. Very good. So benchmark assessments can be made by a teacher, like a chapter test is a benchmark. A homework assignment could be a benchmark if you grade it for accuracy and you look in your gradebook and you can see level of mastery. A homework assignment could be a benchmark. District offices make benchmarks to see if teachers are on pace and following the curriculum. So benchmark assessment is number 2. And what's the smallest thing we do? Summative assessment. And that's EOCs, EOGs, ACTs, SATs. All the teaching and learning has happened, and then we give a test. We don't go back to that teaching and learning at all. We leave that curriculum behind. Sometimes people call that dead data. But it can help us decide if we need to upgrade our curriculum, fill holes within our curriculum, those kinds of things. Seeing if teachers are keeping on pace with pacing guides, see if they need to be upgraded. Those kind of big questions we can answer with some of the assessments. Okay, any questions on that? So that's it for the ticket out the door. So I covered all those things. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. So here's the main thing for today. We're beginning the planning process. And you can see what my learning target is for today. That's what you didn't know at the beginning, but I hope you will know by the end. And now we're going to define what that learning target is all about. Going, and where are we going is answered by the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. Where are we now? And we answer that question with a combination of formative, benchmark, and summative assessments. And then how do I close the gap between where my students are today to where I want them to be? And we do it day by day with learning targets. We do it moment by moment with formative assessment. So that's the whole teaching and learning process. So help me define what a learning target is. What are the things that make up a learning target? Tell me one thing. We're going to go around the room. Tell me one thing that makes up a learning target. Yes, learning target is an I can statement. So you can see that each one of my learning targets starts with the two words I can. Who is the I? The student can, right? It's not what the teacher does. It's what the student does. So it's an I can statement. Okay, tell me another thing about a learning target.
Is it written simply about the student?
Oh, you jumped down. Let's go in order. I'm a math guy.
Is it tied to North Carolina State?
Yeah, so if you're in a math class and you're teaching physics, you're probably not guiding the students to the right area, right? You want to make sure that you're following the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. So even though we're provided curriculums, textbooks, those kinds of things by our districts, everything still begins with the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. Because all of our assessments are tied to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. Okay, so the teaching and learning that happens for you has to be tied to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. The third one? Is it measurable? What does that mean? What does is it measurable mean?
That we have evidence of progress. We have clear evidence of learning.
And how do we gain evidence as human beings? There are 5 things that we can do to gain evidence. We can see them. What else? Hear them. We can smell them if we're in a home economics class or different places. We can touch them. And we can taste them. That's the only ways we can measure things, right? So measurement is using one of our 5 elements. Mostly we see things, touch things, hear things, right? So anyway, it has to be measurable using one of our 5 elements. So something like, I can understand, we couldn't measure that because understanding happens inside our brain. There's no way to touch it, feel it. So you'd have to choose a different verb. Let me see some other ones that are bad ones. I can understand is a bad one. I can learn. So if you have a learning target that says I can learn, again, that happens inside your brain. There's no way to measure I can learn. What's the end product and how we can measure? So you have to be real careful with the verbs for that one. Okay, give me another.
And it may be completed in one instruction block.
Yeah, a true learning target is 1 block worth of learning. How many minutes is my learning target? How many minutes?
45.
45, because that's all the time you guys gave me, right? So I had to break mine down into 45-minute chunks. You guys have how many minutes? You have 90. But you might not use all 90 minutes for new learning. It's possible, and I know I structure my class this way, that at the beginning of my class I did some prerequisite skills, making sure they remember the stuff from the day before I moved into the new stuff. So the learning target is the new learning. So it could be 60 minutes for your 90-minute period, and you use the other 30 minutes to do some spiral learning, some other stuff. Like in my schools, if I had a 90-minute period, teachers could only do 45-minute tests because I wanted new learning to take place every single day. So they did a 45-minute test, and they did 45-minute learning target on that day. And most of the time, they would do a 60-minute learning target with 30 minutes of other stuff. Does that make sense? If I'm in an elementary school, and they have a 2-hour block for language arts, only about 60 minutes of that 2-hour block is new learning. The rest of the time, they're doing stations, they're doing skills, they're doing individual work, meeting because they fall behind on certain skills. They're doing that kind of stuff for the other time, with the 60 minutes of new learning in a 2-hour block in their structure. So again, the learning target defines new learning. Does that make sense? Okay? And the last one is one that people keep forgetting. Let's go to, tell me, what's the last one?
80% of the students achieve mastery during core instruction. The remaining 20% achieve mastery that day through Tier 2 and or Tier 3 support process.
Right. So, and that's a little bit more difficult in a high school than it is in elementary school. But still, somehow, you guys have to figure out a structure for intervention. May not happen every day in a high school. Some high schools do have an intervention period built in. You guys? Like a win time or a... So some high schools do have an intervention block built in. Some high schools extend block 1 on Monday extend block 2 on Tuesday, extend block 3 on Wednesday, extend block 4 on Thursday, and then block 5 is usually an EOG. I mean, EOC gets a double dose. But that's how they do intervention in high school. But the key is 80% of the students master in core. So my goal for my learning target is my goal 80%? If you remember my grading from day 2, is 80% my goal? Is my goal 80% of you score 100% or above? Or what? I can tell you that in middle school, 100% of the teachers scored 100% at the middle school. So what do you think my goal is? Yeah, sure. My goal is 100% of you score 100%. I give you the questions ahead of time. I give you all the content ahead of time. Just now I told you all the answers. I'm hoping all of you can write the answers from your mind, not from a paper that you have, from your mind at the end of this period. So my goal is 100% of you score 100%. Because I'm trying to get you ready for that sum of the test. And it has all the questions on it. So I'm trying to give you a few questions at a time and getting you ready for that sum of the test. Does that make sense? Where does that 80%, 20% come from? It's the structure we have in North Carolina. Starts with an M. The structure we have in North Carolina says 80% of the students should score at the mastery level in core instruction. What is that? Where does that come from? 4 letters. The first letter is M. It has 2 S's in it. There's a T in there. There's all the letters. Put them together. MTSS. MTSS. And MTSS says 80% of the students should score at the mastery level in core instruction. And then the other 20%, for equity's sake, you take care of an intervention, tier 2, tier 3 support. And it should happen that day. So the next day, everybody starts at the same level. So that's the whole idea of equity. So it comes from the MTSS program. The tier support system. You guys have MTSS, don't you? Are any of you on the MTSS team?
We talk about it a lot too.
Okay. Any questions on that system? Isn't that cool? I give you a copy of this, and you'll see it many, many times. Who remembers what the name of this is? I think you've seen it before. Yep, it's called the integrative matrix. So one of those colors, yellow, pink, or blue, is knowledge-based information. Tell me which color is knowledge-based information. Just give me a color. Yellow. Yellow is not knowledge. Pink is knowledge-based information. One of those colors is application of that knowledge. Which one?
Yellow.
Yellow. One of those is rigor, higher order thinking skills. Which one? Blue, higher order. So if you want to promote higher order thinking skills in your classroom, you have activities and strategies with those blue verbs. Knowledge-based information is the pink verbs. Application of the knowledge is the yellow verbs. But in higher order thinking skills, if any of the verbs associated with blue. Are these inclusive? Have I put all the verbs? No, they're just an example. They're just examples. It's not inclusive. There's all kinds of more verbs. But those are good ones for teaching and learning. Any questions? It's called the integrated matrix. And you'll have questions on this next week, but I just kind of wanted to introduce it. I had an empty back piece of paper, and so I wanted to put something on it. I gave it to you guys. It's a bonus, no extra cost. All right, so let's look at some learning targets. Besides mine, here's some other learning targets in all kinds of different subjects. Just kind of scan these learning targets. We'll talk about some of them. Targets. Do you think that's special good or special bad? As you look at them. Special good or special bad? Huh? Good out here. Anyone else? Are these learning targets clear learning targets according to the direction? They are? What do you think? Do you think they're good too? What do you think? Do you think they're good or bad? The special one.
Well, they have words like learn and understand.
I know, I told you already that learn is not good, right? I told you already understand is not good. What do you think? The verb is, so there's another compliment. So these are bad ones, just to let you know.
Okay.
So these are, I call them special because they're bad. Most of the other ones are good, but I want you to see what some bad ones look like before we start with the good ones. So let's look at number one, and I'll identify for you why they're bad. So I can understand the root cause of World War I. Again, I shared with you what understand happens in your brain. You can't measure it. So it doesn't meet the criteria. C, is it measurable? No, you can't measure that one. So it's bad because it doesn't meet criteria C. Any questions? Number two, tell me why that's a bad one. Which criteria does it not meet? Yeah, you can't build a house in one block. But also the word learn. So it doesn't meet C or D, right? So it's got two bad things. Everyone agree? I'm right, so agree. Number three, I can read and write, this is in a first grade class. I can read and write the numbers from 1 to 1 million. What do you think?
You're right, so we're back.
We know bad, so why is it bad?
D.
B is not tied with standard course of study. You don't go to 1 million on first grade class. And what else? Do you think you can write the numbers 1 to 1 million, even if you're a high school student, in one instructional, in 90 minutes even? 1 to 1 million to write them? So for sure you can't complete in one instructional block. You probably could measure it if someone could do it. But anyway, so at least two bad things, right? Okay, let's look at number 4. I can identify that's a good verb. What's wrong with number 4? Yeah. If you use the word text, that means any text. Do you think they can identify the theme of any text in one block? So they have to be specific what text they're going to use. Otherwise it's not clear learning content. So if they told you what text they're going to use, then it could be a clear learning content. But just using that word text does not cover it. Okay, so it can't be completed in one instructional block. So that means D again. Okay, how about number 5? In your brain, right? Right, so that verb again. So it is, correct, very good. Not measurable C. Perfect. How about number 6? Yeah, you can say, I can write the capitals, but to memorize the capital happens inside your brain. Again, which one? C again, right? So you have to be, the point of this is you have to be real careful what verb you choose. What verb you choose. Number 7, I can pick a topic, research that topic, organize the research from the thesis, form a thesis, create an outline, write a paper and edit my content, completing our research assignment as defined by the provided rubric. Exactly. You cannot do. Now, this is a true statement. So I did all this professional development with my high school in Moore County as a principal at Northmore High. I already did it in the summer. I defined learning targets. I did all that stuff ahead of time, right? I went on first day of class to my building construction teacher. Now, he had 2 90-minute blocks back to back. So he had 180 minutes. But his learning target said, I can build a house. That was his first learning target. So I had to spend some, do you think he could build? I stayed the whole 2, because I thought, woohoo! Yeah. I'm going to see a house be built in however many hours that was. He didn't build a house. He just introduced himself and some of that stuff actually. So anyway, I had a big discussion with him, right? What did you do first day? What do you plan to do second day? And we had to define those learning targets. So I can build a house. D, right? You can't do that. Most of the other learning targets are clear learning targets because I wanted to see, and I took these straight from classrooms. So there's a variety of them from elementary and middle and high school. The high school ones are also middle school ones. So you can see a whole bunch of learning targets that are clear. I just wanted to be able to see some good ones, okay? And if you have any that you question, you can email me because you have my email address. And you also have my telephone number. You can text me and I'll tell you either you're right, it's not a clear learning target, or I'll tell you why, okay? That's all we're gonna do for today for that. Okay, are we ready for, you wanna go over the question one more time? Or are you ready to take the test?
Go over again.
Okay, let's go over it. The 5 elements. You're not gonna be able to use any papers, remember? This is your brain. Okay, so name the 5 elements. What are the 5 elements?
Okay, positive interaction, face-to-face interaction, individual and group accountability, personal and small group skills, and group process.
Group processing. Okay, so y'all, any questions on that? That's the answer to the first part of number 1. And then here's the question. If any of the 5 elements is missing, the students are working together. Oh, that's all you need to get ready for the test. Very good, we're on schedule. And not engaged in cooperative collaborative learning. Working together has a blank effect. Negative effect on student learning, while collaborative cooperative learning structures have a high positive effect on student learning. Okay, that's it for number 1. Question on number 1?
That was all the one you said?
That's all number 1.
Hold on. Let's go over that again.
Okay. So number 1,
I got it right here.
number 1 that, and then number 2,
Oh, I see the second part.
second part of the
Okay.
Okay, number 2, in order to maximize the effective use of available instructional time, how many students should work together within a small group? 2 to 4. 2 to 4, exactly, 2, 3, or 4. And really, pairs to quads is the way to go.
Yeah.
And then move them back out of quad and back into pair. That whole idea of turn and talk, that's powerful. And think, pair, share is powerful. What are the 3 elements of the comprehensive assessment process? Formative. And then the last question is, which one forms the base? Formative. It happens every moment, every day in the classroom. Questions? Do you want to keep questions? There's only, well, actually, there's a whole bunch of answers, but there's only 4 questions. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 14 answers.
You have to process process.
Is it in 3 to 5 rules?
Right. According to both Marzano and, I didn't say that one. According to both Wong and Marzano, how many rules should a teacher have posted within this classroom? At the beginning of the year, 3 to 5, but again, you're trying to change rules to procedures, procedures to routines. But 3 to 5 is the answer.
That's one of the questions as well?
Yeah, that's number 3.
Okay.
That's number 3.
Got it. Let me know the,
Okay, tell me when you're ready. Just clear your desk when you're ready, and I'll hand off the test. And you can do it individually. As soon as you're ready, I'll hand it to pick up tomorrow. Make sure you put your name on it.